So, we come to our first keynote. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome today Chris Anderson, the owner, the curator of TED Conference Business, a man who's been alongside so many entrepreneurs, has got so many stories to tell us. And I'd like to welcome on your behalf, Chris Anderson. Hey, Chris.
Hello, hello.
You all right?
I'm great. It's so nice to see you. Is there actually a live audience there, like real people in the flesh?
Chris, there's hundreds. Hello, nice to see you. Very good. Yes, okay. No, there's not. We're in a studio. We do have several hundreds. I'm not sure quite how many, but several hundreds watching today, all looking for these great pieces of wisdom from you, of course. I'd just like to frame this. I want to discuss entrepreneurialism with you in the context of the extraordinary entrepreneurs you've known, you've met, you've invested in, you've been inspired by, and of course that you've featured at TED. So let's just come on to this. And also, of course, your own extraordinary entrepreneurial career. For those who don't know, Chris is a relative rarity of a Brit who's been successful here, but then was successful in the US. I want to begin with this sense of light bulb moment for entrepreneurs. Bit of a cliche that entrepreneurs have that single moment of crystal clear insight, eureka. And yet that's exactly how you described Elon Musk and what he experienced in his bedroom. How so? Talk us through that.
I'm not sure actually there is always a light bulb moment. I think for some it's that the light slowly comes on. But what there is, I think, in every entrepreneurial mind is an exercise of a human superpower, which is basically repatterning the future. You know, we're the only species on the planet who can do this, and different, inventors do it one way, designers can do it, creatives in general do it. We reimagine the future. Entrepreneurs are seeing opportunities, and how that opportunity comes into focus is different in every case. It may be that someone knows of a new technology, for example, that creates a new piece of possibility for the world, and that they know how that could be applied or whatever. Or it may just be that someone is thinking, I'm getting more and more frustrated with the work I'm doing right now. I've been thinking more and more about this, and I have a friend who is who's also excited about the same thing. Boy, we could join forces and do something magical. And so it's mixing up some combination of human possibility, technological possibility, and certainly financial possibility. I mean, you have to have a belief in a picture that you could raise some money to do whatever it is. They come together, and yes, I think often, for me, it's always like 3:30 a.m. The pieces are shuffling, and suddenly, boom! It's like that. Wow, that really could happen. That's amazing. So yeah, in Elon Musk's case, I mean, Elon. So I did some research on him and spoke with him several times in research of an article in Fortune, and have interviewed him at TED and so forth. I mean, he's a once in a generation type entrepreneur. Certainly, some things he does people find annoying, and fair point. But what he is extraordinary at is broadening that shuffling of the future right out to sort of system scale. So the raw physics of what it actually takes to send a rocket to out of the Earth's gravity, combined with instincts on cost. Like when he started SpaceX, part of it was just literally doing the physics of what is the cost of the fuel that it takes to propel something as heavy as a rocket out of gravity. And he realized that the cost of the fuel was less than 1% of the cost that NASA was incurring for every launch. So they said, well, there's just a design issue here. They just have not designed the molecules of the real world in the right way to allow this to be done for a much lower cost. It's not against the laws of physics. And so from there, lots of, what is the design that could work? Who are the people who could actually make that happen? And using this kind of thinking, he came to ideas like reusability being an absolutely fundamental need for rockets. You have to design them so that they don't just disappear every time and blow up. They can be reused, and that's fundamental to economics and so forth. And so putting together a bunch of pieces to create a system that can change things, that's what he's almost uniquely good at. I don't think that's an aspiration for most entrepreneurs. I think we can aspire to change a smaller part of reality than that.
Yeah, I mean, one way or another, entrepreneurs are envisagers, they're imagineers, they see things differently. But I want to come to this point about, dare I say, the marginal craziness of entrepreneurs. They're crazy right up to the point of success, and then some are deemed to be heroes, and they become geniuses. Elon Musk quite clearly is one, Steve Jobs is another, both serial successes. But what advice do you give to entrepreneurs watching this? How do they help to identify what's a world changer, or at least something that works, from what is simply not possible, particularly if they're not always the best at taking advice?
Yeah, sometimes the best entrepreneurs aren't very good at taking advice. They have a sort of confidence in their own vision. I mean, I think the first thing that there's two key things you have to be able to do. One is just to imagine the world in which the idea you have is flourishing. So, I want to do the Uber for salads. How cool would it be to press a button on an app and have a salad arrive within 5 minutes? I could picture that world. Lots of people can make salads. It's not that hard. You could sign up. You could have set recipes, and just build an app and do it. And it's sort of like brilliant. And so maybe you can convince yourself that there's some idea like that. Please don't do that one. Actually would work. But then the key piece, and this is the piece where I think a lot of entrepreneurial visions fall down, is you have to be able to imagine a pathway there. And that's definitely going to include funding. It's going to include, certainly on the internet, where so many entrepreneurial dreams are located right now. You have to be able to picture some kind of path to critical mass. With what most brilliant, like an app like Uber, only works because so many people use it and so many drivers are there. So to get to that point involved an actually absolutely brutal process of taking on taxi companies one at a time, and I mean it was incredibly hard to get there. So without the pathway there, you're probably not going to get funded, and many things die right there. So I think the best types of plans often involve, could it work? What's the minimum way in which it could start to work, and how do I get there, and who would be the 2 or 3 key allies that I would need to recruit to get to that point? If you're starting an event, for example, events, again, they have this critical mass problem of no one will go to a party unless they think other cool people are going to the party. So you have to figure out who are the 2 or 3 people I could somehow persuade through some contact or some persuasive power or some other reason to commit to coming, so that everyone else will want to come. And so it's those 2 things. It's the vision and being able to picture the pathway there. And those 2 things will be very different in different cases, but those 2 are always necessary.
Yeah, you're right. And I don't want to get too meta about discussing events, because this is an event where we've had that exact pathway ourselves. But it is absolutely right about critical mass, whether that's of scale, such as some of the web pieces you've been talking about, or whether it's events. When you get enough good people together in some form or another, value can be created and potentially shared for all. But I want to talk about teams. This related point, given the sort of sanctity of the vision, almost the messianic vision that some entrepreneurs have. How would you advise entrepreneurs building their teams so that there is someone capable of catching that rogue balloon before it goes up into the stratosphere in some crazy idea?
I mean, yeah, the team part is critical. I mean, Future wouldn't have happened, Greg, if I hadn't somehow persuaded you to come in and join the party at some point. Yeah. I think it's again, it's different in each case, but an absolutely key part of the entrepreneurial skill set is to persuade people to come along for the ride, to get them excited, and they're taking, anyone who joins an entrepreneurial startup is taking some kind of personal risk. There's never a guarantee that, I mean, most startups fail, for goodness sake. So there has to be, it has to seem like fun. It has to seem exciting. I think what you want to, the first thing you're going to have to be able to communicate to potential team members is the dream. It's like, how amazing would it be if this was in the world and we could do it? We really could. It's not that hard. We could do it. You have the skills on this side. I can do this. This other person here, she can do that. Wow, wow, wow. And so building excitement is one piece, and then just taking a very realistic look at what are the elements that you need. I mean, most startup businesses, they have to be good at making something, so you need the skills to do that in an amazing way, and they also need to be good at selling something. So you're going to need people who can persuade, and that those are all different skill sets, and that is where the breakthroughs happen. It's when a team comes together who are excited by each other. Suddenly, it feels like anything is possible, and it can be so exciting and joyful, as well as, of course, stressful. Those early days when you really feel like, with this group, we could do something amazing. Should you start an entrepreneurial effort before you have a team in place? I think you need to know that at least some people are going to be there with you to do it, and you can sound that out and dream. Let them be part of the dream. The more that people are part of the dream, the more buy-in you'll get from them. So there's an exploratory process before all this. Who is on the team is an absolutely key part of that imagining of the future that I'm talking about, because some of the dots there are going to be moved by specific individuals, and so that they need to be in early.
Yeah, I mean, your optimism, bubbles through in talking now. It's optimism is a sine qua non for any entrepreneur, anyone with a new vision. But for you personally, has your own optimism been blunted by experience? Are you as optimistic and, I don't know, focused as you might have been when you founded Future those decades back?
So optimism is such a slippery word. People use it in different ways. Many people use it just to mean a feeling of hope. I think of the future and I feel hope. I'm pretty sure things are going to work out, and that's not a very helpful view of the term, I think. And depending on the day, I sometimes feel hope and I sometimes don't. I see optimism as a stance where you're fighting to make something good happen. And to do that, you have to believe that there is a possibility that it will happen. You don't have to believe that it's likely it will happen. To go back to Elon Musk, he famously has said, in the case of both Tesla and SpaceX, that he thought the odds were that they would fail, but that the opportunities were so extraordinary that you had to try. And so he took an optimistic stance, which is, but suspend disbelief for a minute. Believe that there could be a way forward. What would that way look like? So that's certainly how I see. And in that sense, I'm still optimistic. I'm in whatever I'm looking at. You certainly have to believe that there's an exciting way through. Sometimes it's not clear what that way is, and you have to spend a lot of time figuring that part out. As for overall optimism about the world, it's been technology over the last few years has disappointed a lot of people, me included. When the internet first happened, there was just this incredible sense that it would bend the world toward a greater good, that it would bring people together. The truth was only one click away. Suddenly we could see people on the other side of the world. We could be empathetic, gain empathy, and all these things. And there were lots of early examples of that happening. It was that belief that sort of persuaded me early on that TED Talks that were owned and were the sort of the key asset of the conference that I bought should be given away, because they wanted to be free. Knowledge wanted to be free, and who knows what the response would be if you did that. And sure enough, that worked out really well. But in the last few years, we figured out ways to algorithmically bring out the worst in each other, and it's incredibly disappointing. And I think all of us with entrepreneurial mindset need to figure out how to take back the damn internet and make it work for a better future and not a worse one.
You're not using the expression "take back control," but there's an element of that. It's a sort of it's the antithesis point that entrepreneurs being optimistic. There's a lot of social good we're going to be talking about subsequently, sustainability, multiple different areas, harnessing the power of the net for good. There is both an opportunity, but as you're intimating, a need for that as well. I want to come back to that decision that you took with the TED Conferences business, which, for those who don't know, TED Conference was a single event with a relatively high ticket price to enter, a sort of a locked box, essentially. And Chris, you took a decision to say, well, you know what, that is the business model, but we're going to make it free. We're going to stick it all on the net. That was pretty risky. That could easily have just imploded.
Yeah, I mean, we've certainly plenty of people advised against it. It was made easier by the fact that TED was owned by a nonprofit. It was a foundation that I put money into that had bought TED, and a foundation is supposed to be there for the public good, and so that definitely helped make the decision. But what's amazing is that even if we'd been a business, that would have been the right business decision to give away our biggest asset, because in the connected world, all the rules about what you should hold on to and what you should give away have changed. By giving away something, yes, you lose the right to exclusive access to it. But first of all, it can replicate and spread across the world at the speed of light, pretty much literally. Two, it costs so little to give it away. You know, back in the early 90s, if you'd wanted to give away lectures to people everywhere in the world, it would have cost you, you'd have had to mail them DVDs, basically. It would have cost you $2 per talk, minimum. That doesn't scale. Over the internet, it's a tiny fraction of a penny for each incremental talk. So, I mean, that any digital asset can basically be given away to vast numbers of people for free. That is an astonishing fact. And guess what you get back? You get back reputation. And people know about you. And if they like what they've been given, it is amazing how they respond. Within a few months of giving away our first TED Talks, we were deluged by offers from people to translate them for free into their language. And so we set up a system where 2 volunteer translators could check each other's work and translate something for free. And there are now 25,000 of them or so active at the moment. They've translated TED for free into more than 100 languages. I mean, you know, and that's as a response to, so, and then demand for our conferences, far from going down, actually went up. So just from a business model point of view, it worked out. And I just think, yeah, whatever your entrepreneurial plan is, including radical acts of generosity in it, may well be your ticket to success. What aspect of the service you're building or doing can you just give away? Because that is likely to be what causes it to lift off. And it's an absolutely key strategic question to ask.
In a sense, it's almost do good and good things will happen. That radical openness, that generosity, it's right from a business point of view, but absolutely it's right in this particular case from a social good or from an exchanging ideas point of view. And that's been profound with TED. I'll come on to other characteristics of entrepreneurs. One is obsession. It's perhaps not just useful, but it's essential for entrepreneurs. Do you buy that? Do entrepreneurs have to be obsessed? Is that the only real way to succeed?
I don't know about obsessed. I'm trying to think of different entrepreneurs. I mean, certainly many are. What is non-negotiable is determination, and those two things are fairly closely linked. I mean, literally the number one predictor of whether an entrepreneur will succeed is not how smart they are, or funding, or the team, or anything. It's their determination. Are they? Because you're trying to shift the world. It is always going to push back at some point. The world does that. It's funny that. And so you have to be ready for really dark days when, you know, a key team member has left, a key competitor has suddenly woken up to you and is playing dirty tricks. Sales are suddenly plummeted. The bank's calling. what do you respond in that moment? And it's the people who are ready to fight like crazy who make it. So yeah, determination, yes. I think in some cases obsession, but I would like to think that I would like to think it's possible to be married to an entrepreneur and still have time from them and joy from them. Like, they don't have to be so obsessed that they just turn into someone obnoxious and distant and only on one thing.
Well, I don't know about obnoxious and distant, but I noticed you recently quoted that George Bernard Shaw line recently. The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, bit of a leap, therefore all progress depends on the unreasonable man. I seem to remember that being a mantra of a certain maverick entrepreneur we dealt with in Italy. He was either quoting this or displaying it daily. But entrepreneurs can't always be mavericks. You have to play the game sometimes. So in your career, how have you balanced between being a visionary but also having to be a pragmatist to get things done?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of examples. I mean, really, everything you do, in one sense, has to be pragmatic. You have to figure out what is the way forward, and so you have to navigate existing, I don't know, distribution channels, funding mechanisms, regulation, and all these things. They are just that they are part of the reality you have to move through. And so, yes, I mean, you just, of course, you have to be pragmatic a lot of the time. It's very hard, like, I think different entrepreneurial ideas are different. What you have to do at every stage, though, is to still see that there is a pathway forward to getting done, to building what you want to build. You can't if someone starts to say, as a pragmatic matter, you need to shut down this little production unit here because honestly, they're being really annoying and they're expensive and so forth. Well, maybe, but if they are the people building the key to building what you want to build, then no, you just have to find some other way around, that particular hurdle. So I'd say, yeah, of course, be pragmatic, so long as it's in service of building what you need to build.
Yeah. So clearly, don't lose sight of the ultimate game. Not that entrepreneurs want to do that. They almost, dare I say, almost start at the end point and work backwards. A piece of a priori thinking, which is no bad thing sometimes. It's back to your point about dreaming, imagining something, and then figuring out how then to create it as backward steps. Another characteristic, which I know you've talked about recently for entrepreneurs, is, as well as that unvarying conviction and vision and communication and everything, is resilience, the bounce back ability that entrepreneurs have to have. I think you've compared it in a sense to the difference between height and weight, whether or not you're in control or if it's something you're essentially born with. Resilience, how do you build that as an entrepreneur?
Yes, I think you build it like any other muscle. You exercise it, and it's through repeatedly pushing yourself to do something that is hard. I mean, a couple of things happen. One is that you probably do literally increase whatever muscles there are in your brain, and the brain is in a way a muscle, to make it stronger. But what you certainly build is confidence, because you build the recognition that, okay, I can do this. I've done this in the past. I've done something like this in the past. I've done something that feels as hard as this feels right now in the past, so I can do it again. So the studies with kids that get them to believe. If you can get a group of kids to believe that they can change their own mindset, that if they believe that their own brain is capable of change, that will actually improve their chances of success in life. Right away, you see a little bit of improvement from them, because a light bulb can go on and people can be more inspired to try and learn and so forth. But the bigger change happens over time, because that first light bulb can lead to an act of, okay, I'm going to try and do that thing. And then they see it works. And then a year later, when something comes up, they go into that same mode and build again. So I just think I think if you believe that resilience is a key part of building a company, and you have to believe that.
Yeah.
I mean, take every chance you can. First of all, just to look back in your own life and look at the times when you have done something you've organized something, or any project that you have organized in the past counts as a piece of entrepreneurship. What did that feel like? What can you tap into there? And then can you build on that? Can you push it more next time? And so just buying into the notion that I'm going to make resilience part of me. It's going to be part of my identity. It's going to be something I'm proud of. That I think builds the strength to get ever better at it.
One other key characteristic is curiosity. It's essentially an interest in the world, which helps you figure out possibilities and routes to achieve them. But where do you think that figures in the sort of the lexicon, the values of entrepreneurs? And can you develop or even teach curiosity in yourself and bring it forward?
I think you can. Curiosity leads to curiosity. So like often people are so busy or they have so much going on in their life that they don't have time to be curious. This actually happened to me, funnily enough, as a building Future, the business, for 15 years. It was so all-consuming that I stopped reading, I stopped looking at anything outside, and I kind of lost curiosity about the broader intellectual world. And then, for whatever reason, I think I read a book by Steven Pinker on how the mind works, and that exploded 100 things in my head. Like I said, it suddenly gave a whole new lens on the world, and it made me want to dig deeper into dozens of the ideas that were sort of articulated there. So I guess curiosity is a journey. If you feel curious about something, take a step in that direction, and watch what happens inside your mind. Watch where else that takes you. I definitely think that if people fret about trying to be creative. I'm going to try and be creative. I'm going to try and be creative. That's a very hard thing to force. Where you will get there is by going on a curiosity journey, and just start asking questions and trying to get them answered and see where that takes you. And that is what is likely to ultimately to catalyze curiosity, to catalyze creativity inside you.
Yeah, essentially, stay curious, always be learning. Some of the themes we'll be picking up with our two presentations from the universities subsequently about how you can essentially seek to develop new ways of thinking. I want to come back to another element of risk. I mentioned in the beginning that you're rare on a number of fronts, but specifically this, a successful Brit in Britain who then sells and goes to the States and starts over. Looking back, how much of a risk was that? Were there times in those, I don't know, early 18 months, 2 years or so of what subsequently became Future US, were times you thought, what the bloody hell am I doing here?
Yeah, definitely. It's in the UK, we were so lucky. I didn't know actually how lucky this was at the time, but publishing hobbyist magazines, which is what the early business was a business that you could actually grow from its own cash flow. So long as you'd figured out how to go from idea to publication to printing the first issue quickly within a few months, you could grow the business from its own cash flow, because you would get money from distributors just before you had to pay the printer for that issue. Or you could get money upfront from subscribers and so forth. So there are very few businesses that allow that, and I didn't know how amazing this was. So Future in the UK had doubled every year in size for 7 years. You just and there were just, at the time there was no internet, so specialist magazines were the internet at the time. And there were so many areas and hobbies that people had, so there were just an endless list of possible launch ideas. Coming to America, it was different. It's a much bigger market. Competitors are much bigger. It's newsstand distribution didn't work, and so yeah, that notion of being able to start a magazine and fund it from its own cash flow wasn't there. It meant you had to take much bigger financial risks, and yes, it was scary. A couple of things worked early on. A couple, including the first internet magazine I tried over there, failed, badly, and we were burning through millions of pounds, and so yeah, it definitely felt risky, and that contributed to the decision, which in many ways I regret actually, of selling the UK business. And but we did eventually make it in the US, at least for a while, until the internet crash made things harder again.
You find that you and perhaps others learn more from failure, where everyone has had failure. We don't necessarily always draw attention to it. You just have just then. Do you learn more from failure than from success?
I don't know about more. I mean, it would be lovely to say that, and it's a comforting thing to say. We definitely can learn from failure, and there's no shame in failure, by the way, in entrepreneurial failure. It's one of the issues in England, I think, Britain generally, that we're a little judgy of, first of all, of anyone being so foolish as to be an entrepreneur in the first place. And if you fail, oh, you're a failure. No, you're a learner. You're a courageous learner, is what you are. And you can go on to the next thing. But I think you, if you're wise, you learn a lot from success as well. The key is to try to figure out what it was about something that made it successful. I mean, certainly the experience of giving away talks and seeing them take off. In my case, that was one of the biggest lessons I ever learned, that what you give away could be absolutely key to the future. It's what led us to give away the brand TED. We called it TEDx, but we gave it away so that anyone could do their own conference, and wouldn't have happened without the earlier experience of giving away content. And yet it proved absolutely transformative to the organization. So there are now 3,000 of those curatorial teams operating at their own financial risk around the world and delivering to TED for free 25,000 videos a year. I mean, it's an amazing thing. But failure, I think one of the main things I mean, every failure is different. So yes, you will learn what not to do again. I think you also learn about your own determination. And I think, like if you imagine a failure that just takes you to the point where you have to give up, at least in your next endeavor, you will know that, you will know what that lowest point feels like. And anything that is hard but not at that point can give you confidence to press on. So just on that emotional level, I think you learn as well. I think you learn from both, Greg. You have to, from all that you do, you can learn.
Yeah, that is going to be such a key theme today, just that point about learning, interpreting, learning, doing and going. And there's a strange alchemy of success. We can't always do you mentioned earlier, this sort of made up Uber for salads or whatever. You can't just take one element of success and then say, okay, replicate. It doesn't tend to work like that. But I want to talk, ask you to talk as we are coming towards the end of this now, about this, that history is written by the victorious, and so are business books typically. People don't tend to dwell on their setbacks or whatever. They're written, and people who talk from the lofty position of those who've made it, perhaps recasting success as both inevitable and personal. But what about the happenstance of luck, of situation, of circumstance? What part has luck played for you?
I mean, when all is said and done, everything is about luck. Every single damn thing. I mean, there are obvious things in my case, like the fact that I was starting this business back in the mid '80s. We were publishing computer magazines. Well, computers had just come into homes. That meant that there was this explosion of new content that there'd never been such a sort of a palette of possibility before. And two, those very same computers allowed transformation of the cost model for producing magazines. You, instead of paying an expensive unionized shop in London to do all the production, you could do it with a group of 5 friends from your home, and actually make a magazine. That was astonishing. And there was huge luck in that. And if you look back in history, like, it's no coincidence that Bill Gates and Steve Jobs emerged right at the same time, same age, that they both were among the very first people to get access to computers at their schools. And that was just a huge piece of luck. There were only a few hundred other people in the world who had that potential. But then beyond that, just the skill sets that you have are ultimately all luck. I mean, I didn't decide who I was going to be born to, or the experiences and the education and so forth that I had. It's all serendipity in one form or another. Even the, oh, but I worked hard for this. Yeah, you did. And guess what? You had the kind of makeup and the background that gave you the confidence and the ability to work hard. Not everyone has that. So take it all as luck, and if you're successful, you should be the most grateful person that there is. Just grateful. I mean, grateful to the universe, and you should feel 100%. You should feel an obligation to give back as a result, because I mean that's the rule. To those who are given much, much is expected, and so it's all luck. But celebrate it, and double down on it, use it. It would be a crime not to, if you've been put in that position. But don't keep your ego in check if you possibly can, and give back. That's the rule.
Yeah. Well, success in part is related to ego. It certainly fuels ego. All of us have seen that. Perhaps all of us have been conditioned by that to some extent. But I think it's some really, really powerful insights there, Chris, about being grateful for success, of giving back. That's the game, and that opportunity that success, like profit, is an enabler. It's not an end in itself. Chris, on behalf of us all today, thank you ever so much for your wisdom, your insights, your inspiration, frankly, for a long period of time. But I hope people today will have taken a lot from this. I certainly have. Chris Anderson, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. And good luck, everyone. Dream.
Thank you. Dream.